Welcome to today's episode of Bloodstained Backstories, where we dive into the chilling crime story that takes place in the heart of Ybor City, Florida. Known for its rich history, vibrant culture, and lively streets, Ybor City has always been a place full of life. But beneath its festive surface lies a darker tale, a story of murder, mystery, and unanswered questions that still haunt the city. In this episode, we'll explore the twisted events surrounding a brutal crime that shattered the community, and we'll delve into the investigation that uncovered more than anyone would expect. Grab a seat, because the shadows of Ybor City are about to reveal their darkest secret. Our story takes place on October 16th, 1933. Victor Licata was in his home with his family, and he used an axe to murder the entire family, his two brothers, sisters, and parents. Michael Licata, the father, was found in the front room, and then in a bedroom that was connected to that is where Prudence, his sister, and Jose, his younger brother, were found. In the rear bedroom, his mother, Rosalie, was found with his brother Philip, who was clinging to life beside his dead mother. His brother was rushed to the hospital, but however, he did not survive that tragic battle. It wasn't until the next day before the murders were reported. Normally, Victor's father would leave his house early in the morning and go to one of his two barbershops that he owned locally in Ybor City to open them up. And when neighbors did not see any of that happen, they called to do a welfare check. When police responded to the house, Victor was discovered by police confused and in a bedroom of the family home. He was wearing a clean pressed shirt and trousers, and beneath his clothes, his body was smeared in blood. This indicates that something must have happened and Victor was involved. And Victor had changed clothes because the clothes themselves did not have any traces of blood on them other than on the inside of the clothes, the part that was touching his body. The clothes themselves did not appear to be smeared in blood or anything that you would expect if someone had been wearing them during the time of such brutal murders. You would expect tons of blood spatter and droplets, and none of that was the case. Victor claimed that he had been dreaming of the murders, and in his dream, his father Michael entered his room, grabbed him and pinned him against the wall, and his mother ran into another room with a huge carving knife. His older sister and two younger sisters, aunt and uncle, were all there laughing. And he even stated that his father held him against the wall while his mother cut off his arms and jammed wooden stumps into them. He was fearful for his life, and so he grabbed an axe and hit them. But he did not kill them. Now, that is quite the story to be telling. And as we're going to see, the police kind of run with it. Victor had been under the care of a psychiatrist, and his mom stated several times that she was afraid of him and what he might do to the family. Tampa police had been out to the house twice because of Victor and his behavior, and a judge even wanted to institutionalize him, but the family declined and they said he would remain under their care. Now, this is the time where we actually have institutions for people who were insane or the criminally ill. We do not have those type of facilities much any longer. They've all been shut down, or there's just very few of them. But back then, we did. So despite there being evidence of Victor's history of mental illness, police and the press made out Victor's issue to be related to substance abuse. And the substance that he was supposedly addicted to is marijuana. And marijuana is what made him go after his family. He was high that night and then decided that the murders would happen. Now, in today's world, we know that that's not necessarily the case. However, back in 1933, there wasn't as much known about drugs and drugs like marijuana. So it was a plausible theory, and the news ran with it. It was actually used to help try to go against the 1930 anti-drug campaigns, and this case and the use of marijuana was a mainstay in that argument that there needed to be changes in drugs and bans, and marijuana in particular. Victor was examined 11 days after he was arrested, and he was diagnosed with dementia precox and homicidal tendencies, and he was also overtly psychotic with a condition that was acute and chronic. And it was determined that his hallucinations were homicidal impulses by periods of excitement. And because of this, he was never prosecuted for murdering his family. Instead, he was committed to the Florida Hospital for the Insane in Chattahoochee, Florida on November 3rd, 1933. Again, this is a time period where instead of being sentenced to jail time and having criminal charges, he was sentenced to going to this hospital for the insane instead. He was only there for a relatively short period of time before he and 4 other patients escaped on October 15th, 1945. The other 4 patients that escaped with him were caught pretty quickly, but Victor was not. Victor remained on the run and eluding police for several years. Eventually, in August of 1950, he turned up in New Orleans at a waterfront restaurant, which was actually owned by his cousin, Philip Licata. And he had spent several days there off and on, chatting with his cousin Philip, and eventually he did take some money from Philip, and Philip called the police while he was in the restaurant. And police did show up, and finally he was arrested. And then he was brought back to Florida, and instead of going to the Florida Hospital for the Insane where he previously was at, this time Victor was going to prison. He was taken to the Florida State Prison in Reefer, Florida, and then only a few months later, on December 4th of that year, Victor killed himself by hanging. Now this case is extremely odd, and it doesn't end in the 1950s. In 2019, Kurt Schleier, who was a person that owned the family home, suggested the family murders might have been actually the mafia, and Victor was framed. In the house, alcohol bottles were discovered, suggesting that maybe the family was involved in bootlegging, which this was a time where we were just coming off of Prohibition in the early 1930s, so there could have been traces of that. However, this was pretty quickly debunked by a local historian who said that at the time, this is not really how mafia did hits. They did not use axes to kill people at this time period. They used guns. And so the theory that this could have been a mafia hit and then Victor was just an innocent bystander, or Victor was framed in some way, really didn't have any legs to go on. But it is a odd case nonetheless, because after the murders happened, Victor got dressed, he changed his clothes, and there was no mention of that. There was no mention anywhere that Victor's clothes from the night before were found and were blood-soaked. Just that the clothes he was wearing were clean and pressed and weren't. So where did his clothes go? Was Victor in bed and the attack happened and he panicked and the trauma sent him into this tailspin? We don't really know. And because of the 1930s, there was less forensic evidence collected than there would be today for us to really think about that. So this is an interesting case that you will want to continue to consider. What other reasons could this have happened? What was truly Victor's role in all of this? Do you believe that Victor committed these murders alone? Was there another accomplice? Or was Victor framed? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow us so that you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. You could also check us out on a variety of social media platforms and stay attuned to anything that we are working on. Links to those are in the description of the podcast below.